So at the beginning of each of these master classes, I think I'm going to start a new little tradition here, which is to share a book that's helping me in my journey as an author or as a thought leader or setting up my thought leadership system. And so the book of the week for this week is Who, Not How by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. So Ben Hardy's a friend of mine, actually, and Dan Sullivan, I happen to be in his coaching group called Strategic Coach. It's a huge group, tons of people in it. He's been running it for 20 or 30 years or something. So this book just barely came out, and it's fantastic. I'm actually going to read part of it to you that gets to the key of it. In case you want to you should buy it, but in case you are going to skip buying it, but you want to know the meat of what it's talking about, here's what really stands out to me. So again, the title is Who, Not How. You'll see how this fits in as I read this story to you here. So for years, Tony Caldwell had wondered, how can I eat better? I've wondered that too. But he couldn't get himself to do it until he learned to ask himself a different question. Then Tony switched his question to, who can help me eat better? So instead of how can I eat better, it's who can help me eat better. This shift was revolutionary for Tony. It led to lines of thinking not available within the framework of his former question and mindset. He decided a personal chef could help him eat better. Now, I'm not in that. That's above my pay grade. I can't afford a personal chef, but it'd be nice if we could all afford personal chefs, but that's not really the point here. So don't get sidetracked by Tony's lavish lifestyle here. So he decided a personal chef could help him eat better. Still, he didn't want to go through the aggravating process of finding a personal chef. He was a busy man with lots to do. Given his overall responsibilities, something simple like finding a personal chef felt like quite the undertaking. If you're coming in a little bit late, I'm just reading an excerpt from Who, Not How, which is my book of the week this week. And I think there's a key here that will help you as authors. So that's what we're getting to. So Tony procrastinated for a while, but he really wanted to eat better. His why was becoming deep enough that he was no longer willing to tolerate feeling bloated, inflamed, and unhealthy. He wanted to be vital, feel incredible, and look better. He became fed up enough about his lack of results to shift what was happening. He realized his question and how focus was getting in the way of his result. He changed his question from how can I find and hire a personal chef to who can help me find and hire a personal chef. Within 30 seconds of asking that question, he thought of someone on his team who could help him find the chef. He asked her for her help, and she happily said, "Yes, I can help you with that." In days, Tony had a chef cooking for him and his family 5 days a week. He didn't have to do anything, no stress whatsoever. All right, so whether or not we can all hire personal chefs isn't the point. The point is change the questions you're asking about how to do things, like how to write your book, from who can help me to write this book? How do I edit this book? Change that to who can help me edit this book, or who can edit this book? When we change questions from how to who, then new ideas will come to us. And there are lots of people out there who can help us with things, often very quickly, often very easily, and especially with things that we're trying to do ourselves. So I've been going through this myself lately. I'm launching the Published Author Podcast, which takes a lot of time, and there's just a lot of moving parts to get set up. And so I look at this and I say, okay, well, I'm cheap, so maybe I should just do this myself. Okay, how do I do this? Well, there's all this stuff to be done. So very quickly, I looked at this and I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm cheap, but I need to use my time wisely and decide what I want to do here. So, okay, number one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to edit the audio and video files for the podcast. It's both audio and video. It'll go on YouTube as well as everywhere else you listen to high quality podcasts. I don't want to do the editing. I mean, I could, but I'm not going to really learn much of anything from it. So it's not going to be fun. It takes a lot of time. It's processor intensive on the computer to do video editing stuff. So that's something that I need to outsource, but I don't want to go out and pay somebody $250 an episode to do this editing. So how do I do this? That's what I was thinking. And then I switched the question around to who could help me do this? And when I started asking, who do I know who could help me edit this and who would be priced reasonably, I realized, you know what? I've got a nephew and he's done tons of audio engineering. He knows exactly what he's doing with this stuff. Now, he's never done a podcast, but he's done a ton of high-end audio engineering for all sorts of other things. He knows exactly what he's doing. So I emailed him last night and I said, "Hey, do you want to work with me on this?" He's like, "Yeah, I need some side money right now. I'm only able to work 40% at my job right now because of the COVID stuff, and I need some more side income." So I was like, "Great. He needs money. I need somebody cheap to do my podcast. He wants to do it. This is win-win for both of us." So by switching from not asking how to get the podcast edited, but instead, who can help me edit the podcast, I found my answer quickly. So think about this. If you want to grab the book, Who Not How by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy, highly recommend it. But just start asking your questions differently. Instead of asking, how do I do this? Ask, who can help me to get this done? All right, with that, let's jump into our masterclass today and start talking about Q&A. For those of you just coming in, I started just a minute or two before the hour. Something new that I'm going to start doing is I'm going to show up a minute or two early sometimes here, and I'm going to share a book of the week, some book that's helping me to do what I do as an author, as an aspiring thought leader in building my thought leadership system. So that's what I was sharing here at the beginning. But I don't want to take too much time away from the Q&A. So where possible, I'm going to jump in a little bit early and take care of that because a lot of people are sitting here a few minutes early as well. And that way we can reserve as much time as possible for the Q&A, but just add a little something in there. So, all right, if you've got questions, then get them into the Q&A section here. By the way, has anybody heard of this book? I'm pretty sure nobody's got it unless you pre-ordered it because it just barely came out. And the only reason I got it so quick was because I had it on pre-order. But if you've got this book or if you get it in the future and you read it, let me know what you think of it. I'd love to know what you think. Also, there are a few interesting things actually about this book from a book production standpoint. Number one, that type is really easy to read. I mean, you could read this from a mile away. Who, not how. That's big. It's also a very simple title. Who, not how. You know how to say that, right? And you know how to spell it. It's not confusing or anything, but it's still a little bit clever because it's got this kind of twist on it. Who, not how. Well, what does that mean? You don't know. It's asking a question. It's simple, but at the same time, it's asking this question. And then what do y'all think about the way that they put the text, the subtitle, in between the title there? So Who Not How, the formula to achieve bigger goals through accelerating teamwork. It's an interesting way to put the subtitle in between the text there. On the side, they've got it two-toned. So they've got half in orange or yellowish. Does this look like orange or yellow to you? I can't even tell, and I'm holding the book. So they've got the big title up there, and then they've got the authors down here, but they've got that contrast. So here's what that contrast does. If you see this on a shelf, you see this back there with a bunch of other books, that stripe or that contrast there is going to make it stick out to your eye subconsciously versus the other books that are on that shelf. So that's one way to make a book spine stick out when it's on a shelf like that. The book is not very long. It's 185 pages. So it's a little bit shorter than most business books. You can see there, it's not a super thick book. So that's just some reassurance for those of you who feel like, oh, I got to have a thick, nice, thick book. No, this is a nice book and it's nice and thin. And one thing I like on the back cover is that with these blurbs, they didn't pack them in. Sometimes you see book covers and the blurbs are literally going like all the way to the top, all the way to the margins. The blurbs don't do all that much for you. These aren't a huge seller for you. If people look at the book, they pick it up and they say, oh, hey, here's Chris Voss. Oh yeah, I loved his book, Never Split the Difference. Or, oh, here's Peter Diamandis. Oh yeah, he's that X Prize guy. Great, that adds some credibility. But it's usually not the huge difference between people buying the book, not buying the book. It just adds a little bit of credibility there. but it's not like you need to pack them in. And if you get 8 versus 6, then that's going to make the difference. That's not going to make any difference. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the back. He's got plenty of margin around it, which makes it look more professional. So all good. One interesting thing is that this is uppercase, who not how, who not how. It's uppercase, but then on the back, they've got it title case. I would have made it uppercase on the back too, probably, but hey, maybe they know something I don't. So there you go. Book cover design. I'm not really a big fan of this particular shade of orange, but it does stand out, and orange books are underrepresented on my shelves. So it's helping me to add some balance to my colors there behind me. Okay, we've got some Q&A going here. So let's dive in. Shlomo, can you say something about adding a paper cover or whatever that's called? All right, so I forgot what it's called. I know what it's called, but I forgot it. So you see here that you've got this piece of paper, right? So it's hardcover, but then you've got the paper on there. So when you go to print a book, for example, through Ingram Spark, you can choose soft cover, which of course is paperback. You can choose hardcover, or you can choose hardcover with this piece of paper on it, whatever that thing is called that escapes me at the moment. So if it's a business book, then I like to release it in hardcover with this piece of paper on it. Yes, it costs more. Yes, you make a little bit less money. It's not that big a deal though. And because this is the norm with business books, I like to do it this way, even though the piece of paper doesn't really do anything for me, although it does act as kind of a bookmark. But that's the way I do it. So I would recommend releasing it as hardcover with the paper thingy on it, also soft cover at the same time, also audiobook at the same time, and Kindle at the same time. So those 4 formats all at the same time. That's the way that I would do it. Some people will do it differently, but at a minimum, soft cover, audio, and Kindle at a bare minimum if you don't go for the hardcover. Amy's got a question, wondering if you are planning to create an index for the workbooks. I sometimes think of a simple question to ask you, but then I think that it's probably in one of the workbooks. I'm only on workbook 2. Then I need to look at each of the workbooks to try to find it. It's a pretty time-consuming process for a simple question. Yes, absolutely. I am going to add an index. It's only not there because it's being created right now. But perhaps that's something that we could even add in right now as we're going along somehow. I got to think about that. Yeah. So yes, there definitely will be an index. I'm just trying to think about how we can help you along the way right now. And let me think about that and get back to you. At a minimum, yeah, we can create a table of contents. That would be pretty easy. An index is a little bit more in depth, but at least a table of contents would be helpful, right? So I think we can do that. Yes. Okay. Other questions? In fact, I'm going to write a note down about that. Okay. It's right there. I've got a note to myself. Okay. More Q&A. What's holding you? Oh, okay. So one thing I want to mention is I'm going to send this out in an email later today as well, but I've got a homework assignment for you because we are now getting to the point where you should be working on book stuff. And so now everybody works on their book in different ways. You could be doing research, you could be doing interviews, but there are a few things that everybody should have done by now. And if you don't, let's get them done in the next week. And those 4 things are, number 1, your book title, at least a working title. It doesn't have to be the final title, but you should have a working title that you're working with. You should also have a working subtitle that you're working with. Again, you can change this later, but you should have something in mind that you're working with now. If you have a title and a subtitle, that means that you have an idea of what your book is about. And you should be able to create a one-liner. Now, we talk about the one-liner in the workbook, but the short version of the one-liner is that it should tell people who your book is for and the results that they can expect from reading your book. Those people, your ideal audience. So that's your one-liner. And then a thin outline. Now, a thin outline could be literally 7 lines of text saying chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 through 7, intro, forward, conclusion. But what are those chapters? What's the basic idea that goes in each of those chapters? That's it. Thin outline, super easy. It would take you all of a few minutes to write it out as long as you know what it is. If you don't know what that outline is yet, let's get that done within the next week. And if there's something getting in the way of getting it done within the next week, I want to know what that is. Let's talk about that today here. Put that in the Q&A and say, yeah, I'd like to get that done, but I can't because XYZ. Let's talk about that and stick that in the Q&A and talk about it. So those 4 things, again, I'm going to stick that in the chat here, but I'll also send this email out later, but I'm going to put it in there just for now. So the first thing is working title. Second thing, whoops, I thought it was going to give me another line, but it's just going. Okay. Working subtitle. Number 3 is your one-liner. And number 4 is your thin outline. If you're getting hung up on any of these, let's talk about them today so that you can get these done during the next week and make some progress. So Shlomo says, I'm stuck at who the book is for. I feel like I'm going backwards. I'm not sure what my question is, though. I'm trying to find an answer. So Shlomo's book thus far has been for digital nomads broadly, but trying to narrow that down a little bit more. Exactly what type of digital nomad with what type of problem or what type of opportunity, that's part of what Shlomo's been trying to figure out. So it sounds, Shlomo, it kind of sounds like you've almost been questioning your life choices here, like trying to figure out, like, is this even exactly who I want to be working with, digital nomads at all? And if so, digital nomads, then digital nomads with what kind of opportunity or what kind of problem? Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I mean, I know you've been involved in this for a long time and you've thought about this for a long time. And so that's a big question to ask. Is this really what I'm planning on dedicating the next 5 to 10 years of my life to? Is to this thing? And that's why I want to write a book, because this is my long-term thing that I want to be involved with. If the digital nomad lifestyle is that thing that you say, I'm doing this for the rest of my life and I want to help other people who are doing it for the rest of their life, if you're solid with that, I mean, really solid with that, then we can figure this out. We can work this out. I want to make sure that you really are that solid with the digital nomad lifestyle and working with that. Shlomo says there's actually a better name, which I'm researching, which is remote workers. That definitely is a lot broader because everybody's a remote worker these days with COVID. So if that were something you wanted to focus on, that would be, in my mind, that's a total shift, unless we're talking about more or less the same thing with remote workers. But I'd be curious to know what you mean by remote workers. Are you talking about just anybody who works remotely and doesn't go into the office? Or are you specifically talking about people who are traveling the world and living in different places? But makes me think of the book Rework by Jason Fried and David Hannemeyer Hansen. I think I'm getting that right. But that book came out quite a while ago. They're the founders of the project management tool Basecamp, and they wrote a book that talks a lot about remote work, but more in the sense of not having an office and working from home, and not talking at all, as far as I can recall, about travel, about the digital nomad side of things. So yeah, Jacob says, when I work with my clients through Zoom, I'm a remote worker. Yeah, so just got to get that terminology straight. Sue says, on the front cover of the book, should I put my initials after my name, such as RN, CI, ASW? So Sue has all these acronyms, and some of you have these acronyms as well because you've gotten certain degrees or certain certifications. And yeah, the question is, should I put this on there? And the answer is, it's the same on your book as it is for your LinkedIn profile, which is What do those acronyms mean to your ideal target audience? If it means something to them, then include it. If they don't know what those letters mean and it's not going to help you establish credibility, then don't include them. So, for example, Ben Hardy here on his book, he put doctor on the front of that, right? Dr. Benjamin Hardy. But at the same time, here's this book, Competing Against Luck by Clayton Christensen. Now, Clayton Christensen also is a PhD, and he was a very famous one. He just passed away a year ago. He was one of the leading professors at the Harvard Business School. So why did he not put Dr. Clayton Christensen or Clayton Christensen PhD on there? Well, I think number one, he's this super humble guy. So I think that he left it off because it just wasn't his personality. And I think he felt perhaps like it created some distance between him and his audience. Another reason he left it off is because he's already kind of famous, and so he doesn't need to put it on there. He doesn't need the extra credibility of adding those words on there. Sun Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, warrior general who wrote The Art of War, he said, when you're small, appear big. When you're big, appear small. Clayton Christensen was already a big deal. So he was appearing small. Ben Hardy, he just got his PhD and he's just building his name up. I mean, this is his third book. He's already got 2 books that are huge and stuff, but still, he's not ultra famous yet. So he's still building himself up. So maybe he'll drop the doctor thing in a while after everybody already knows that he's got a PhD. So think about how it affects your ideal audience, though. And if you feel like, I think they'll trust me more, I think they'll find me more credible if I have those acronyms after my name, great, include them. If you feel like, you know what, these are just confusing, nobody knows what they mean, and people don't really care anyway, leave them off. Amy, can you give advice about time management if I only have an hour a day? I'm finding it challenging to get enough done in an hour a day. Maybe I really need 2 hours. So she says, I've got the workbook and manage and grow an email list and posting on LinkedIn, writing the weekly newsletter, setting up a personal brand website with content and video, and then actually writing the book, of course. So here's how I would divide it up, Amy, is no matter what, I would try to work on the book a little bit, even if it's just 10, 15 minutes or something. So I'd make that the highest priority. The writing, I mean, something direct, all of this is working on the book, right? But something that's directly involved with the book. So your outline, working on the one-liner, working on the title, working on the cover, working on the actual manuscript, but something that is hands-on with the book. I would be working on that every day for at least 15 minutes a day. And then I would put the rest of my time into these one-time activities. Not that they're one time, but they're the things that once you get them done, you can kind of check them off. So for example, setting up the personal brand website, that's something that once it's done, you can basically check that off and you're going to have a lot more free time once you get that project done. And that's a fundamental part of your platform. So that's something that I would work on. Now you've got content, which can be an ongoing process in your weekly newsletter and posting on LinkedIn. A lot of these things are ongoing. So, but I would then work on figuring out how to turn those into less time. And one of the ways is through shadow time or reusing content. So for example, if you're writing a newsletter, then that should also be content that you put on your website. That should be your blog posts. That should also be the content that you post on LinkedIn. So you don't have to create unique content for your newsletter and your website and LinkedIn. It can all be the exact same content or very similar content. So it's essentially a copy and paste with a little bit of modification. That's one way that you can save quite a bit of time. And if you constantly look for those time saver things, again, I had a professor who called it shadow time, doing 2 things at once, but try to figure out how to do 5 or 6 things at once. How can I create all this content with just one activity by doing one thing? And of course, that content should be in your book as well. So if you're writing your book for 15 minutes and then you say, you know what, this could be a newsletter right here. Then you turn it into a newsletter. Then you turn it into website content. Then it's LinkedIn. Then it all can go together. It can all be the same content. It doesn't have to be different stuff. So, but at some point, you'll probably need to switch that so that it's not just 15 minutes of writing, and you're going to need to dedicate 90% of your time to just writing that content. But again, when you're writing the book content, you are creating content for the other things. Danny, my book title is Question Leadership: How to Harness the Superpower of Great Questions. I'm writing it for 18 to 35-year-old next-gen business leaders who need to develop into great leaders, particularly in small business. I love that. Very specific. I love the EOS, that's Entrepreneurial Operating System, Traction by Gino Wickman, for those of you who haven't heard of it. So I love the EOS 6 key components of an entrepreneurial business. I want to mirror that. However, by the way, I did get the book. Where is it? It's somewhere. It's red. I haven't put it on the bookshelf yet, but I did get it. I want to mirror that. However, I am kind of overwhelmed by the amount of research I think this could require. Maybe I just interview lots of people. Identifying the 4 to 8 key components of asking great questions seems like you can't just pull them out of a hat. This is where I am stuck. Am I overthinking this? I don't. This is my opinion. I don't think you need to do as much research as you think you need to do. I think once you start doing the research, ideas are going to come quickly, and you might figure out that, you know what, I've got my 7, 8 questions, whatever they are, and I think I'm done. And then you can keep doing research just to solidify that. But I think if you start, you'll find ideas pretty quickly. So when I was just thinking of an example, and then it escaped me. Shoot. But what I've found in researching my own books. So for example, I'm working on a book right now called The Hope Strategy, and it's about applying principles related to hope in your business and in your broader life. And the idea here is that there's a formula to hope, to create hope, and to use hope in your life and in your business to motivate people, to motivate yourself, and to get things done, to take action. And that there are these certain steps that you go through. And so what I'm trying to figure out is what's the scientific process? How does hope really work? Because a lot of people out there will say hope is not a strategy. And what they mean is you can't just hope for good things to happen and then sit back and eat ice cream and just be like, I'm hoping things work out. Hope has to be paired with action. But if you don't have hope, then the problem is you never get to the action. If there's no hope, there's no action. If there's no action, there's no results. If there are no results, then nothing's happening. So there has to be hope in your strategy. And in fact, I believe hope is the only strategy. It's an essential part of every strategy, regardless of what it is that you're trying to create. And so we're taking a contrarian view to this phrase, hope is not a strategy, and saying, no, hope is the strategy. And everything comes from hope. And here's how you use hope to build out your strategy. So in researching this, I mean, when we came up with the idea, we said, hey, that sounds like a great idea. I'm co-authoring this with one of my business partners. And we came up with this idea and we said, yeah, that sounds great. But what's the formula? Like, what exactly goes into hope and how do you use hope? Well, I didn't know. I mean, I could come up with a few ideas off the top of my head, and my partner had some ideas, but we weren't sure they were right. And maybe we were missing some. We didn't know. So I bought a bunch of books on hope and started researching it. And very quickly, as I dug into those books, I would come across paragraphs and I'd be like, oh, that's one of the things. Okay, great. That is it. And here's somebody credible who's really researched this stuff and they're saying that's part of it. Great. There's one of those things. And then I would open another book and I'd find something else like that. And I'd watch a video or I'd read an article or something. And very quickly, the formula came together. And now what we're doing is we're still doing research. We're still reading books, but it's more about making sure that we got it right. So as I listen to a book, I'm thinking, okay, Do they have all the different parts of the formula, the parts of the hope strategy? Yeah, okay, there's 1, there's 4, there's 2, and that confirms to me that we're on the right path, but I'm no longer in that place where I'm trying to figure out what the steps are. I've already got those. I'm just confirming it and making sure that I've got my bases covered. So I think if you get a few books and start reading them and just say, hey, I'm just going to start reading these and just soaking it in and see what ideas come out, I think you'll come up with those steps pretty quickly. And then you can listen to a bunch more books or read a bunch more books just to make sure that you're covering your bases, and it won't be overwhelming or all that daunting. Okay. Sue says, going back to the acronyms after her name, thank you. I will just use the RN. It is the foundation of my first story. Great. Casey, could you riff on audience building far in advance of the book coming out? My audience isn't very LinkedIn oriented, so I'm looking at Facebook as the hub for messaging to an audience, getting feedback, etc. Might even run some ads to get the initial targeted ideal readers interested in the subject matter, which is family connection through games. Thanks. And again, I just love that topic, family connection through games. I think that's a great book. My sister was just visiting us here with her family. They love to play games. We like to play games. We're not maybe on the same level they are, but we like it. And so we experienced a lot of connection through games. By the way, that word connection, Casey, if you have never heard of EFT, which is emotionally focused therapy, I think that's what it stands for. I can't remember. But check out the book Love Sense by Sue Johnson and her material. She's the creator of this EFT. It's a form of therapy, but it's all about connection. And it's not just like romantic connection. It's like any sort of relationship connection, family connection, kids, parents, whatever, any sort of connection. You can even apply it to what we're doing here with your readers. There's a connection there. So there's something to learn for everybody in there. But since you mentioned the word connection, and I've been reading a lot of Sue Johnson stuff lately that stood out to me, could be she's done a lot of research too. So there's a lot of stuff that you might like, scientific stuff you might be able to dig out of her book and use it in yours to say, look at this data on connection. And anyway, there might be some good stuff that connects there. So pun unintended. All right. So Facebook, because your audience is not exactly on LinkedIn. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily ignore LinkedIn still, but I get where you're coming from, that you're going after kind of more of a consumer-oriented group, family focused. I mean, this is not a business book, right? So yes, focusing on Facebook is great. And yes, you'll probably have to run ads because organic reach on Facebook has been decimated over the past few years as they've changed the algorithm. So you almost have to pay to get in front of your audience. But there are ways to get people involved and build a community there. One is to start a group. I would definitely recommend starting a group on creating family connection through games. I don't know what the name of it would be. Maybe it'd be related to the title of your book, but something that is a group for people who are parts of families and love games and want to talk about everything related to families and games and helping their families through games and stuff. So create a group to start creating a community there, and then funnel people from the group to an email newsletter, because you really want to get them on the email newsletter. And so group to the newsletter, that's part of the audience building that I would get started with. You can seed that group with a bunch of friends and family and stuff. Say, hey, I'm starting this group. Here's why I'm starting it. I need to build this audience. This is going to feed into the book that I'm going to release later. Help me out by joining the group. You don't have to be active in the group, but invite a bunch of your friends that you think might be interested in the group. And so you can invite your circle, they can invite their circles. That can kind of get it seeded and started, because people are very hesitant about joining groups that have 24 members or 50 members or something. But if it's your family, then it's easier. Now you can also go and add people to the group yourself, but this is always risky because people might just tune it out or something. But you can go there. You can just go down the list and add people, I think a couple hundred at a time. So that's another way to get a group started and get it pumping. So if you're focusing on Facebook, I do that, but definitely do not ignore the email newsletter. Ultimately, you really want to get them onto a newsletter where they're getting content from you and really buying into what you've got to share with them. So now I'm starting a podcast right now, so this is on my mind a lot in terms of audience building. If you've ever thought about doing a podcast, then that's something else I would look into. It's so easy to do. You can launch one on Anchor, which is a hosted platform. I think it's owned by Spotify now. And you can launch a podcast on there very easily. If you want to do it a little bit more professionally, then you can record it with the software that you have on your computer. You can invest in a mic that's not that expensive. This one's a little bit more expensive here, but you can buy a $60 mic that's plenty good to launch a podcast, and it's not that expensive to set up. And then you can edit it yourself, or you can find other cheap ways to get it edited. But think about that too, because there is an audience for every podcast imaginable out there. Gene, the stuff that we are learning and implementing in this process requires me to go back frequently to add, edit, and enhance various aspects of creating, publishing, engaging, and promoting, i.e. build my 7 systems of influence. Is it possible to create a visual that might help people conceptualize how all the pieces fit together and relate to each other? This would help me prioritize the real must-dos and needle movers in the proper sequence to have the most positive impact on my overall process. That's great. I'm making a note of that as well. If anybody else has any other suggestions like this, like adding the table of contents or index or creating a visual, I would love to get more suggestions like this. Any way that I can make the workbook better or make this whole group better to help you get your book done, let me know. I want to do it. So let me just make sure I understand everything you're saying there, but I think I've got it. Yeah, just a visual that helps everything fit together. Yeah. So Shlomo says you already have that. It's the one that looks like Walt Disney, but I suspect you're looking for something different than that. Is that right, Gene? I mean, it sounds like you're looking for something that fits the 7 systems together specifically in a visual, if I understand what you're going after. Feel free to shoot me an email if you want to go into more depth on that, Gene, or post it in the Facebook group if you want to get the input from other people as well. So, all right. Barry says, what's getting in my way is selling our home, packing and trying to find a new home in a very hot real estate market. It's taking up my writing/book time right now. It's helpful to think about how to leverage 15 minutes a day. I'm sure I can find that. Great. Just 15 minutes a day. If you get the 15 minutes a day in, it sounds like nothing, but you'll make progress. And Student Life and Activities, I'm not sure who that is, but asked, what was that book you just mentioned that gives some science on connection? Love Sense by Sue Johnson. Putting it in the chat down there. It's a fantastic book. I wish I'd read it 20 years ago or 22-ish years ago before I got married. It would have been really helpful. If you're in a relationship or married, I can't recommend it highly enough. That book has changed my life, changed my relationship with my wife. It's fantastic. Let's see, Dow, what is the platform you mentioned for podcast? Anchor. You can just Google it, Anchor Podcast, check it out. They make it really easy to launch a podcast. So I just put that in the chat there. And Elenia, today I've been accepted as opinion columnist for CEO World magazine. I've listed my book and personal website in my bio. What's your view on this publication, please? Well, first of all, congrats. Like Shlomo says, congratulations. That's great. Utilize that to its fullest extent. Push the boundaries. Do whatever you can to get your content out there. So my view on that publication. So I'm not super familiar with CEO World, so I don't know details. I mean, I know the publication, but I don't know details of it. But it's no matter what the publication is, you can leverage it to get good results from it. And one of the things that will come up for you is you might say, I want to hold back on this because I'm going to put this content in my book. Or maybe I'll get the opportunity to write for Forbes someday, and I want to save this so that I can put it on a different publication that's bigger and better than CEO World or something like that. Don't fall into that temptation. Put your absolute best content on CEO World. Put as much effort as you can, give as much value as you can, be as helpful as you can. Make it awesome, make it incredible, make it the type of stuff that you're scared to put out there because you feel like you've said before, Elenia, oh, if I put this out there, people might not hire me because they can just use the content. You're going to feel that same thing. You're going to say, people might not buy my book because they read the article. It's entirely the opposite. If you write amazing, great articles that people love, it will make them want to buy your book more, not less. And if you have great content in your book, it will make them want to hire you more, not less. So no matter how simple the content is, no matter how small and rinky-dink the outlet might be, put your best stuff out there, because people always assume that whatever they're reading, you've got better stuff to offer. So if they see that stuff and they think it's great, they're going to be like, wow, this is amazing. I really want to read her book now because that must be even better. Wow, this book is fantastic. I really want to hire her now because hiring her must be even better than reading the book. So put your best stuff in there and then leverage that as much as you can. Okay, let's see. Shlomo, what's the name of the book you recommended me? It's Rework by Jason Fried and David Hannemeyer Hansen, but I'm just going to say Jason Fried there in the chat there. Oh, and Casey already answered for me. Thank you, Casey. Jean, can you comment briefly why some books like those by Malcolm Gladwell, like Talking to Strangers, are very easy to read versus books like 12 Against the Gods, The Story of Adventure by William Bolitho are difficult to read? And what are the main considerations to write a book that is easy to read? So a few things. And this would be a great blog post, wouldn't it? So a few things that make it easy for readers. Number one, use simple words. I write at a 5th grade level. I try to use very simple words. I try to avoid any word that is fancy and niche or jargony or whatever. When I'm writing, I look at my language and I ask myself, could a normal 5th grader pick up this book and read it and understand every single word in it? And then second, can they understand the ideas that I'm trying to communicate with those words? And if the answer is ever no, I take a look at that and say, can I simplify this without losing the meaning that I'm trying to get across? So it's not dumbing it down, it's making it accessible and it's making it more readable. Because what happens when language and ideas are complicated and the words that you use and the way that you structure sentences, what happens is that people's brains have to use more effort to figure out what you're saying. When people use simple language, you get into a state of flow where you're reading the book and you don't actually feel like you're reading. It's more like the information is just going straight into your head, but you forget about your eyes moving and following the words on the page. And it's just pure communication. That happens from simplicity. So simple words, simple ideas, simple sentences, short sentences. That's one of the keys to making a book much more readable. Another thing is stories. Lots of stories, because we process stories, we understand stories, we latch onto stories. And so if I could only say 2 things to make your book more readable, it would be simple language, 5th grade level, and lots of stories to keep you going through. By the way, if anybody wants to invest, I think it's about $180, maybe it's closer to $200, but you've probably seen these ads for the link I just put in the chat called masterclass.com. So I'm not an affiliate or anything. I'm not related to it. But I signed up for Masterclass. I was curious. Also, I saw some people on there, like Malcolm Gladwell has a Masterclass in there. So I figured, all right, I want to hear what he has to say in this. But it's pretty good. They have about 200 Masterclasses, and this is everything from dog training to cooking to how to write nonfiction to skateboarding. They've got Tony Hawk in there. So there are all sorts of different classes in there. You can also buy individual classes. And these master classes are not huge and in depth. I mean, at a maximum, it's a couple of hours long, and then that's it. You're done with that master class. But there's some pretty valuable stuff in there, some pretty good stuff in there. So if you take a look at it, watch their trailer and stuff, and if it looks like, hey, that might be interesting, if I learn one thing that's worth $200 for me, you might want to consider buying it, check it out or something. I bought it. I'm not disappointed with it. I think it's been great. I'm letting my family watch the dog training one because we just got a dog, but I've mostly been glued to the ones by authors. They've got the author of Goosebumps in there, and there's a lot of stuff that well, not a lot of stuff, but there are a few key points from his masterclass that made it into the workbook. I think there's something from Malcolm Gladwell's masterclass, an idea that made it into the workbook. So Dow says she signed up for the Anna Wintour one and it was terrible. Okay, so I haven't watched that one. I probably won't. So, but the Malcolm Gladwell one is great. He's got some good stuff in there. So stories, simple, make things more readable. Okay. Let's see. Sue, my title now is Journeys into Hope. Subtitle, Stories of Divine Intervention. Getting some good feedback with this title. It feels right. Sounds great to me. I mean, I think you could run with that. Dow, since I've been sharing insights on LinkedIn and a newsletter and publications, I've gained a lot of traction. Great. But I also find that people get very used to getting a lot for free and tend to back off when they ask for personal audit, imagining that it would also come for free and that I ask for fees. Did you encounter this situation as well? What's your advice? All right. So there's another great, sorry, I mean, you're writing books and I'm into books. And so I'm recommending lots of books. I'm going to stop apologizing for recommending lots of books. But there's another book that is very applicable to what you're asking about, Dow, which is 80/20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall. Okay, just put the title of it in the chat there. So 80/20 Sales and Marketing by Perry Marshall is basically the idea that there are different stages in this funnel. There are different levels that people will be willing to pay for. So let's say that you're putting your content out there and you've got some free content. And 100% of the people who are interested in you will accept free content, let's say. Let's just start there. So you've got 100% in this circle of content. Now, if you take those people and you say, like, let's say a blog post is 100% free. You don't even have to put your email address in. Out of all those people who will consume one of your blog posts, there's a certain percentage that would be willing to give you an email address to get a checklist or some sort of lead magnet. And let's say that it's 20%. So 20% of the people who will read a blog post will be willing to pay for more content by giving you their email address. Of those people who give you their email address, 20% of those people would be willing to spend $10 to get, or let's say $20 to get your book. Of those people, 20% of them would be willing to pay $50 for an audit or a short course or something of that nature. Of those, 20% would be willing to pay $200 for something. Of those who would be willing to pay 200, 20% would be willing to pay 500. 20% of those would be willing to pay 1,000. 20% of those would be willing to pay 5,000. 20% of those would be willing to pay 10,000. So there are people out there who charge $10,000 a month for executive coaching. They charge $10,000 a month for training. And they charge $50,000 for speaking. There are all sorts of people making a lot of money doing things. How do they do that? They've got this funnel. and they're nurturing people from one end of it to the other. And they might not have 10 things in it. There might be 3 things in that funnel. There might be 2 things. It might be the book, and then, yeah, you can hire me for 10,000 a month to coach you. Might be only 2 things. But generally, they've got a couple of these things, and then they're funneling people from one end of that to the other, knowing that most people are going to drop out and not be interested in the next level. So the people who are coming to you and saying, "Oh, I have to pay for this. I don't want to pay for this. I should get this for free." They're not your ideal audience. That's okay. That's most people. 80% of the people are going to be in that boat. But 20%, maybe it's 10%, maybe it's 5%. Some percentage of those people are going to say, "Yeah, I love your stuff. I'd love to pay for the audit." Great. Okay, fine. Don't worry about the people who are saying, "Oh, I should get this for free," or "I can't believe you charge for this." Just don't worry about them. Focus on the people who are willing to pay and who don't bat an eye at it. So I was talking earlier today with people about Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary Vaynerchuk puts out all these best-selling books, but his ideal target audience is actually people who work at Fortune 500 companies and make marketing decisions about who to hire as an agency to run their campaigns. Gary Vaynerchuk has an agency called VaynerMedia with 600 or 700 employees doing around 100 million a year. And of the people who read his book, Crush It, how many of these people are going to hire Gary Vaynerchuk's ad agency for $200,000 a month to run a marketing campaign for them? I guarantee it's 0.0000001%. All those other people are getting his stuff for free. He doesn't care that all those people are getting his stuff for free. All he cares about is the 0.0000001% who say, "Hey, I work in a marketing department at Pepsi and we want to hire you to run a campaign for us." That's who he's going after. Now, when I say he doesn't care, he cares about the people, but he doesn't care that they're getting all this stuff for free. He doesn't care that they're quote unquote mooching off of his content. That's okay. That's the price he pays for getting that fraction of a percent that hires his agency and pays them millions of dollars to run their campaigns. So adopt that same mindset of just moving the right people along the funnel. And the way you get more of the $10,000 people at the end of the funnel is to get more people at the beginning of the funnel and then optimize everything in between. Virginia, hey Josh, what are your thoughts about LinkedIn stories? Why did LinkedIn release this feature? How can we best take advantage of it? Should we use it like on Instagram? So, as to why LinkedIn released LinkedIn stories, well, the easy answer is because Instagram and Facebook Messenger have it too. And so why not copy them and do it? It feels a lot like a Me Too feature where it wasn't necessarily thought out as a part of a strategy, but just, hey, everybody else is doing this, so we might as well do it too. Now, maybe there was a lot of strategic thinking behind it. And if that's the case, I read some official statement on it, and they were talking about it's a more casual way to get people sharing. And I think they want a lot of video content on the platform. I mean, what LinkedIn wants, what we know that LinkedIn wants, is they want people to spend more time on LinkedIn, use it more, and buy stuff on LinkedIn. They want them to buy the upgraded packages like Sales Navigator. They want you to buy courses. They want you spending money, and they want you spending more time so that you're more likely to spend money on LinkedIn. They feel that LinkedIn Stories is going to keep people on LinkedIn longer. So if you want to win on LinkedIn Stories, figure out how to use LinkedIn Stories to keep people on LinkedIn, and then you'll be helping LinkedIn, and LinkedIn will help you. That's the core of how you use LinkedIn Stories. Now, as far as how to best take advantage of it and whether it's actually going to work that well on LinkedIn, I don't know. A lot of people are complaining about how LinkedIn is turning into Facebook and Instagram, and it's just becoming another normal social media platform. I mean, I was even in some debates on politics on LinkedIn this week, which has never happened to me before until I post and say, thank you for not talking about politics. And then I got sucked into some political discussions. And so I'm not sure yet if I'm excited to see stories on LinkedIn, but if I were trying to take advantage of it, what I would be doing as an author is I would be documenting my process. I would be going on LinkedIn stories and saying, I'm working on this book on XYZ topic, and here's something I learned today. Or here's a book that I read that's helping me out. Here's why I liked it. Or I listened to this podcast today and it was interesting for this reason. Here's one helpful thing I learned from this podcast. Or here's an article, same thing. I would be sharing very casual content that is helpful to my ideal audience. And that's how I would be using LinkedIn stories. So if you're inclined to try that out, try it out. Let me know how it goes. I struggle with video. It's hard. Got to do my makeup and everything. And so I just don't gravitate to doing the video stuff on LinkedIn. I know I should, but I just don't. I keep wanting to do it and see if it works. But I would love for somebody else to try it out and then come and tell me, yeah, I'm doing this and it's working great and I'm getting all this attention. You should do it too. And so if you're willing to try it out, let us know. Okay. Virginia again, you once told me that we would get access to your course about LinkedIn. Is it available yet? So yes, everybody already should have access to my email course, 60 Days to LinkedIn Mastery. If you do not have access to that, is that the one that you're talking about? Because I do have multiple LinkedIn courses, but that's the one that's finished. That's the one that's done. That's the one that you can get access to already for free. So let me know just in the chat. Just give me a no if you have not received the information for that. I mean, I sent this out weeks ago. So if you haven't got it, it probably hit a spam filter or something like that. And so I can get that information to you. So if there's anybody else who also does not have access to that course. Okay, Eric says no. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Today, when I send out the replay, I will resend the information for how to get that course for free. And I'll put it in the replay email. I'll also put it in the Facebook group as well so that you can get that. Oh, Virginia says, I paid for your email course months ago, but I'm talking about another one. Okay. So yeah, there is another one that I'm working on, which is LinkedIn using the 7 systems of influence. It's the 7 systems of influence for LinkedIn. Goes in a little bit more depth, has video content rather than just written email content. That one is not finished yet. So that one still will happen in the future, but I've got other priorities like the workbook for this thing. So that will come in a little while. But I'll send out the other stuff anyway today, just to make sure everybody got it. Shlomo, how can you get the option to be able to do LinkedIn Live? What's your experience with it, and why I don't have it as an option if you know? I don't have it either. I think I should. I know people who have a fraction of the number of connections and followers that I have and have never been active in creating content, but they got it and I didn't. And so there is a place where you can apply to get it. And then I've done that, and then you just get no response and nothing ever happens. So that's been my experience with LinkedIn Live. I would love to get it because I do like this format of doing live video, and I would love to be doing webinars and that type of thing on LinkedIn, but they haven't given it to me. I'm still waiting for it myself. Shlomo, sharing an experience. Someone listened to me on a podcast. Then she wanted to have me interviewed for a series of episodes she is starting. We went on a call to figure out the fit. You should have seen her grummy face when I said I have 400 people in my list. She said she is going with people with 5,000 subscribers. Just felt bad after that. Wow, what a put down, huh? Oh, your list is too small. Yeah. So somebody, an event organizer, reached out to me the other day and asked me about participating in a virtual event that she has coming up. And she asked me about my list. And when I told her the number of subscribers on my list, and I said, my list is kind of small. I've got approaching like 5,000 subscribers on my list. And she's like, every single person I talk to tells me that their list is small before they tell me how many people are on their list. She said, every single person. And she said, it doesn't matter if you have 500 or 5,000 or 50,000. People will tell me, oh, I've just got a small list. I only have 50,000 people on it. So everybody feels like their list is small. her response was, she said, first of all, 5,000 is great. But she said, I'm signing people up who have a couple of hundred people on their list, but they're very engaged people, and it's great. So I think if somebody says that, Shlomo says he didn't say it was small in advance, but all right, everybody else. But if somebody asks you how big your list is and you say 400, 500, 300, whatever, and that's the end of the conversation, that's not somebody you want to work with anyway, because their next question should be, wow, well, tell me about your engagement rate on that. Tell me how you're using your list and how people interact with it, because there's quantity and there's quality, and quantity can be faked. I mean, my list could be 15,000 subscribers, but I actually take people off of my list. I take people who don't open the emails for a long time off of the list. I have a process that goes out there and it emails them and it says, hey, I'm going to take you off the list unless you click this link because it appears that you're not reading any of the emails. And I send a few of those emails, and if they don't respond, then I take them off. I could have thousands more people on my list, but I've chosen to make my list more high quality and lower quantity. So somebody who writes you off because they think your list is too small, it's just not somebody that you want to be working with anyway. So, okay, we are 1 minute to the hour, and we just finished all the questions. So I'll be processing this video. I'll send out the replay later today. If you've got more questions, post them in the Facebook group. Love to get them answered there. And we'll be in touch soon. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Hope this was helpful. And we'll talk in the group and next week. Thank you so much.